Now they feel because they're robots so that it can measure, it's more measurable. I disagree with that, because unless the humans are gone, in which case we're all screwed, there's going to be that element of us doing what I think is good work to actually decide path A, path B. What is a good architecture? What is good thinking? What is critical thinking? Why does this not work? I'm curious why it didn't work. Let me research that piece. Like everything I just described to you off the top of my head is our brain doing that thing of kind of trying to find the best path and trying to be productive or whatever it is.
I'm Rebecca Murphy, and this is Engineering Unblocked. Engineering Unblocked is brought to you by Swarmia, the engineering intelligence platform that's trusted by some of the best software companies in the world, including startups like Superhuman, scale-ups like Miro, and companies from the Fortune 500. On today's episode, I'm talking to Michael Lopp, also known as Rands. He's a serial and seasoned engineering leader and the author of the classic Managing Humans, as well as the book that I forgot to write down, but we'll get to that too. And he's also, I know him because he's the creator of a 37,000 member Slack, the Rands Leadership Slack community, which has been a really powerful community for a lot of people in this industry. So, Michael, welcome. And what else should I have said in the intro? You can tell me the name of the book that I forgot.
There's 3 books, soon to be more. And the Managing Humans is the one that is sort of the first one that is sort of still around. I'm working on a 5th edition for that for next year. So that's, and I had to restart it because of AI, which is I'm sure we're going to talk about over the next period. It was sort of I was writing this one chapter and I'm like, if I don't say AI right now, I'm going to just tone it. So I'm like, I have to rewrite the whole damn thing. Anyway, so Managing Humans, and then I did another one called The Art of Leadership. And then I have another one that's coming up next year for sort of more seasoned leaders, title TBD. So, but yeah, so I read a lot. And I also, I've worked at a lot of different companies. I've worked at Slack, Pinterest, Palantir, Apple again, Netscape. So it's a serial manager is the correct way to persistently.
And you even had a little dotcom adventure I saw on your LinkedIn.
Yeah, I did. I had right after Netscape, I went to a startup you've never heard of and just rode that pets.com wave that we all kind of, this is amazing. And then it just vanished. And it was this horrible nuclear winter for a couple of years. That's actually when I first went to Apple, was that time, just to kind of hide, because it was not a good time.
One of the things I want to talk about today is that time, the late 90s and early 2000s. And on the one hand, how different everything is from then, obviously, a lot has changed, but also to what extent are we going through another time like that with AI? Because it feels like all the same wonder and excitement, but maybe a little bit of pets.com mixed in.
Well, I mean, you're right. I think it feels, the thing that's different this one is that and maybe this is just me getting older, but it feels like it's going faster than the other ones. The other ones sort of were cool. The Netscape was probably the first one for me, but actually even before that, sort of the Windows arrival and sort of the GUI arrival was one of those things where that was really kind of the arrival of PCs in general to sort of mainstream. But still, to me, it was oh my God, everything's different and interesting. So, but the pets.com one was, that whole wave, that internet bubble, it just was so, and again, similar to now, it's just, there's so much enthusiasm and so much and everyone's well, there's a bubble, it's going to explode. And, it's got all the same sort of vibes. It's just going so much faster. you and I would not be having this conversation, 6 months ago, right? It would have been sort of have you heard about AI? I'm yeah, I'm kind of thinking about it. As opposed to whoa, everything's about to change.
Well, and even I read a blog post about this last week, I think, about how, you could experiment with all of this for absolutely free in 1995, 6, 7, right? Eventually you needed to buy some hardware to run your stuff on. But I remember my kid brother running a server out of our, computer room or something, right? And the barriers to entry are very few financial barriers to learning. Now, creating product was different, but there were very few financial barriers to learning. And I feel like that's also really different.
Yeah, it is different. But the barrier to entry right now is also just, it's expensive from running all these servers and whatnot. But to me, Well, one of the things I do like about it is like I'm paying $20 for OpenAI or whatever. It's like I'm just sitting there using this like to do whatever. Like I was just talking about fantasy hockey league this morning, and then last night I was working on some code, and the other 2 nights ago I was wondering why moths are eating my sweaters. So like it's sort of this general and it's accessible to everyone, which I think that's cool. We'll talk about a lot of the downside, I'm sure, but it is like the bar to get there is so low, and for right now it doesn't seem ad supported. So I kind of like that I am paying for this, or you can use it for free if you want. But I'm paying for this, and I'm not the product. Maybe I am the product. It's probably it is learning.
You'll be soon enough.
Yeah, but it's still I'm kind of liking. Sort of the lack of being bombarded with ads and all that other stuff that kind of is still a thing that's happening. You got to pay for it, obviously, but it's still a byproduct of sort of that pets.com age.
Yeah, that's very true. Like I've used this for my garden. I've used this for like how do I clean the stain, right?
Right, totally.
So like you said, you've been in this not just in engineering but in leadership since 1998. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's right. Wow, 3 decades.
Right. I mean, I am also of a certain age, let's say. So I started working right around 96, but I didn't get into tech for several years later. But I was working and using the internet in 1996.
Me too.
But what do you like? What's the same and what's different? What is like? How do you get to write the 8th edition of managing? Like, what is the same and what is different in your 8th edition?
It's interesting. I think one of the reasons for my writing, a lot of it is sort of evergreen, although I have updated it 4 times now. Is I think a lot of the lessons about how humans are human are like the same. It's the world is certainly evolving rapidly, but I still think there's just like basic things that are just required to be a good leader. And if you know my stuff, it's very human focused. I'm not going to tell you how to like re-architect the stack. I'm going to tell you who is the right person to pick and how to make sure she is that person, and how to give her clear guidance or to ask her for clear feedback or whatever. It's all those human rules, and we're not evolving as fast as the internet right now, I guess. It's probably the thing. So a lot of the things are the same, like, one-on-ones. Again, it's a philosophy, and there's a lot of different leadership philosophies out there. So it's not everyone's cup of tea, but, I am a small team, high-powered small team. So everyone has something to do, lots of communication, one-on-ones. This is just the Rands playbook that I'm just reciting here. A lot of empathy, a lot of kindness, a lot of people first before the product piece. That's another thing that you'll find. And so that's not really, that's not me. That's me not changing. Does that work for everybody? No, there's a lot of different ways to run a team there, but I haven't really changed kind of core philosophy. I've changed some things. We can talk about that, but I haven't really changed core philosophy in terms of how I want to lead a team and inspire a team during that time. So, but the technology is it's moving so fast. It's like, so fast. That's both exciting and terrifying to the planet Earth right now.
Yeah, and hard to know who will I be paying $20 to a month in December? Like, I don't even know, right? I'm definitely not signing up for annual plans for anything, that's for sure. So the empathy thing is really interesting to me, because I grew up, like, I started as an IC, but I kind of grew up in tech during the time when people were very eager to hire, let's say. Most of my time in tech has been not in the dotcom. I was working at a newspaper during the dotcom bubble. But so not during that, but I started doing tech stuff 2004, 2005-ish. And I got to see the kind of like emergence of the servant leader and like a lot of the stuff that you were writing, the stuff that Laura Hogan was writing, and all that kind of stuff, which was at the time, it seemed like, well, this is this is just how you do engineering management. Like, I'm learning something. I'm like, today I learned this is how you do engineering management. And that was really true in 2014, 15, 16. And psychological safety and all of it. Like, of course, you're going to say that all of this still matters today. And I agree. But how has that conversation changed now that it's a buyer's market, basically?
Well, let's go back to AI for a second. The enthusiasm is through the roof, and it is not a flash in the pan to anyone who's like is sort of like it's just a fling. I'm like no, you were wrong. And yes, it does hallucinate, and yes, you should not trust it to do things without verifying. But that's the same thing you do with humans. But like its ability to 1 to 0, 0 to 1 a thing is unparalleled. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And it is trained on a vast amount of information, which you're working on your garden. I'm trying to get moths out of my sweaters, or I'm writing a bot detection software for my Rands leadership site. I'm not writing a thing about that. I'm just telling it what to do, and it's doing it for me. So like that is like you're smiling, and because it's exciting, because it gives us these sort of superpowers. But all of that was potentially work I would have given to someone else, or hired a contractor to do, or da-da-da. And I'm super happy.
Or not done at all.
Or not done at all. Right. Absolutely. 100%. Like 60, the majority of my projects are abandoned, and I just like, oh, that's cool. I had the robots do it. Didn't work out. Bye. I think the enthusiasm is way high, but the reality of what it can do is real. And I think there's going to be a downward pressure, especially for folks entering the workforce right now, because at company XYZ is going to be expecting X% more out of senior engineer blah, right? Whatever that math is there. So that's, if I were entering the workforce right now, I would be AI, whatever the right way to describe it. I would just be like, it's a tool that I need to know how to use. It doesn't replace critical thinking. It doesn't replace curiosity, but it does allow you to produce so vastly much more than what you could do before. So I think that's something that's changed right now, is just that getting in is going to be a lot harder. Are you coming in as sort of whatever AI capable means? And that's a loaded term, but it's like you have to be able to do that, because that's what everyone else is doing right now. They're figuring out where it is. And it's not, 100% improvement. It's more, for complex things, it's 5 to 10%. But 5 to 10% is huge. I'm making these numbers up, but like that's huge improvement to a team's ability to produce. And I think there's a lot of parts that are a lot higher than that if it's sort of like tactical unit test writing, blah, 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 sort of, it's hard work, but there's things that the robots are just amazing at right now. So that's a thing that's really, really, really changing here. I'm a bit far from your question though.
I wanted to talk about the junior engineer and that challenge, because it is not unheard of for a team to have like one or two more senior people and then a decently large number of juniors. But like you said, when those juniors are producing volumes of code that they wouldn't necessarily before, you might have a junior who can do 2 tickets a week by hand, and now they're doing 2 tickets a day. What burden does that put on the rest of the team? And especially does that senior engineer spend all their time reviewing, mediocre pull requests from junior developers rather than contributing their own code that's probably of higher quality?
It's a great question. And I think this is the swirl that's going on right now, which is, I think for me in my journey, like I'm past the enthusiasm, like this is magic. And now I'm into like, I did the classic thing, and I'll get to your question in a second, of like just saying I was building this weather tracking app, and I was just throwing things at the robot and saying, oh, do this. Oh, can you do this? Is there an API for that? Where would you get that information? And this went on for a day or two. But Rebecca, it was spaghetti thinking. It was like, it was poorly designed. And at one point I'm like looking over as it's kind of merrily doing whatever the heck it's doing. And it's like, it's lost its mind. Like, and by the way, this is no one's fault except my own. This is not the robot. The robot has no intent. The robot's literally doing exactly what I told it to do. But I was looking at it. It's like, okay, now I'm going to refactor this. I'm like, refactor what? What are we doing? So like, kind of it'll absolutely do exactly what you tell it. And in the absence of context, it'll guess. And if you'll be happy if it guesses right, and then you'll be sad if it doesn't. So I think that senior engineer that you're talking about, he or she, is perhaps happy to have this set of sort of infinite set of interns that can help them in the robots. But there's the other people here too, and they've got to figure out whether, the stuff that's coming in from these junior folks that are perhaps using robots to get this done or whatever, is it like garbage or is it good, right? And what are they kind of doing to actually, especially when they're being asked to do more, what are they doing in terms of, quality control on that piece there? So that's when I think of the efficiency that robots are going to give us, that just keeps coming down every time, because it's like, cool, yeah, I got a bunch of an infinite set of interns that are generating mediocre code because it knows everything that happened in GitHub that's not actually relevant to my product. Well, now I'm sitting here dealing with that mess as opposed to dealing with the mess, the opportunity of training engineers, and that sort of thing. So that's the swirl of the AI productivity swirl we're in right now, is like, how's this going to shake out in terms of being the way that we build products and services?
At Somia, we have customers or prospects coming to us, and they're saying, we want to understand the per developer impact of using AI in our organization or such. And, we want to know that if we estimated something was going to take 9 hours and then it took 7, and that was because of AI, we want to know.
How many times have you been asked that version of the question in the last 30 years, right? It's like, tell me how productive this engineer is. And like, we bristle at that because it's not magic. It's more art than science. And yes, you can count code commits or blah, 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 but it works a different way. And that, like, great. Now they feel because their robots are there, they can measure, it's more measurable. I disagree with that, because unless the humans are gone, in which case we're all screwed, there's going to be that element of us doing what I think is good work to actually decide path A, path B. What is a good architecture? What is good thinking? What is critical thinking? Why does this not work? I'm curious why it didn't work. Let me research that piece. Like, everything I just described to you off the top of my head is our brain doing that thing of kind of trying to find the best path and trying to be productive or whatever it is. And the robots are phenomenal. They don't do much of what I just described.
Yeah, it is interesting. There's so much that I have to say about this, but I've said it on other podcasts. But on the productivity front, 5 to 10% is exactly like that is my intuition as well for day-to-day software development. And it's almost more of an ergonomic improvement. It is an improvement in experience, and an improvement in experience leads to an improvement in productivity via like some line of dots. But it's not like I used AI and therefore, I can churn out twice as much value for the business.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of other non-measurable things in there, which is I use it to make better decisions, right? I ask it a ton. I've asked it 50 questions this morning alone on some on productivity, some on random moth problems, right? So that's the other piece as well, is like, I think the quality of decisions is, I hope, if people are doing the right thing with it, is improving. How do you measure that? The fact that I'm choosing a better decision to start the whole damn thing, right? So there's a cascading effect there as well. But again, how to measure? Good luck.
Yes, and yet that's my whole job, is to figure that out. But yeah, I somebody on LinkedIn today was saying, like, how are we going to measure the impact on outcomes? And it's like, well, how were you measuring the impact on outcomes before today?
This is a really important thing, and you're going to giggle when I tell the punchline on this thing, but like, the whole hallucination bit about, is it lying to you or not? And like, the thing I always say and have written is like, it doesn't lie, because lying requires intent and it has no intent, right? But it does hallucinate, which is the nice way of saying lying. And the question is, well, what are you going to do if you get some bad information? And I'm like, are you on the internet? Do you live on the planet Earth? Like, your job as a human is to know when you're being lied to or hallucinated to. Like, that's part of the gig, whether you're a leader or not, is, trust but verify, or always verify, or whatever your policy is. So it's alarming. Like, I asked it to quote to me about something, and I said, oh, Michael Lopp said blah blah blah, and I said, well, and I have Claude and OpenAI sourcing everything that gives me. So anytime it gives me a fact, it's supposed to give me a footnote. The footnote was totally fake, and then I'm like made up. And the only reason I know that is because it's my website. And I'm like, this isn't an article I wrote. And I got into an argument with it, and it was like, no. I'm like, you lie, you don't lie, you hallucinate. And it's like, oh, sorry, da, da, da. So like, that's it's enthusiasm. It's sycophantic enthusiasm is fun when it's like, good question, and then you're like, good question, but here I'm going to lie to you for the next 20 minutes or hallucinate.
You're absolutely right. I didn't do what you said. That's my favorite. I think going back to the junior engineers, I've been doing lots of toy things with Claude Code. Because I have been an engineer, I can like sniff pretty quickly, like, oh, you like not like that. And I think experienced engineers who are paying attention can also do that. They can be like, no, we don't need to reinvent like Git, let's say. We're good. But that, like, how do we build that skill in juniors when they don't? And I mean, I do think this is going to go all the way back to like how we educate juniors in school. But yeah, what are those skills that people need to develop now that maybe they didn't need to develop pre-AI, those junior developers?
I don't think it's changed at all. In terms of what the person coming into industry, whatever the industry needs to do. I don't think those skills have changed. What has changed is that there's this sort of Gen Z meme about cheating is okay. And they're not actually saying cheating like you and I mean cheating. It's sort of like what we would say is sort of hacking, right? We're like, cool, how do I hack this interview? Or I don't need to do this work. So, because the robots help me get things around it. I obviously have a knee-jerk negative reaction to the word cheating because cheating is, again, intent. And I don't think that's what we're doing. But like, this is like a meme. This is coming from Gen Z right now. This sort of like, cool, this is not your mother's or father's, whatever. So that's an issue there. But like, I think the immune system of how people are seeing the work from people ending the work is unchanged. You're going to be like, cool, this is a B, or a C or an F. And because you're not thinking about the problem, you clearly can ask a robot to do the work for you or the research for you or whatever. But if you don't understand what you're building or why you're building or whether it was built successfully or not, that cognitive ability, that critical thinking skills, that's the thing they have to learn. And whoever that is. And if they don't learn those muscles, like, they're just going to be in this echo chamber where the robot's giving them stuff that's kind of, a C or something like that. And I think the folks, the senior engineers, the senior leaders, whomever, the ones who are there to kind of say, does that smell right? Like our job is as important as it ever was in terms of like, cool, this is just a big pile of spaghetti that kind of does what I told you to do, but it's a C. Right? Whatever a C means. So again, I think they can use these tools to accelerate what they're building and what they're doing and how they're thinking, but it doesn't absolve them from thinking. It's just an echo chamber. It's just a very, very interesting echo chamber of like, cool. Yeah. You want, that's a great idea. You should do that thing. Why is it a great idea? You don't know robots. I know what a great idea looks like.
I was asking Claude if it could use itself in a GitHub action, and it was like, well, someday when the Claude command line tool exists, you'll be able to do that, but not right now. And it's like, I am using the Claude command line tool right now. They're like, oh, so sorry, I didn't know it existed.
I was doing something and I'm using GitHub to track everything. And again, I'm just kind of letting it do its thing because I've kind of learned to kind of combine tasks into sort of like a document. And I say, hey, go do this thing as opposed to one-off sort of spaghetti stuff. Anyway, I look over in the other window and it's like, okay, cool. All right. Oh, shoot. I just deleted the entire repository. And it's like, okay, let me roll that back. And I'm just looking, going like, I didn't say anything about GitHub or checking in or like whatever. I think I was working on a GitHub script or something like that. But it like literally blew the repository. But it also knew it's like no problem. Git keeps a shadow, around so you can get it back. But like when it's just kind of merrily doing its thing, it's I'm not really quite aware of what it's doing.
It's something I yell at it a lot to commit often, atomically. So yeah. I want to go away from AI. We may wander our way back. I don't rule it out. But you have had a lot of experience leading people and leading teams and leading like things that people have heard of, like Slack. And so I'm curious. You talked about empathy and all of that, but how do you assess the health, especially if you're up at like director level and not directly working with the ICs? How are you assessing the health and the psychological safety of your teams?
I kind of did it 3 times: Palantir, Pinterest, and Slack. Really, and that was sort of kind of described in different ways. But that was kind of job number 1. I literally went to Palantir to sort of as a free electron. I didn't have like a role. They were like, "Hey, we're kind of worried about the culture," and and with the job was sort of like, with all respect, I mean this like corporate therapist, and it was just and so without like, hey, you got to deliver this product or delivering, hit this revenue number or whatever it was. So that was kind of fun for like 3 months or so. But I used that kind of playbook for all 3 companies. There's a very obvious path to figuring that out, and then there's the listen to what they tell you path. The obvious path is like, okay, who are the senior leaders? Go meet with all of them, and then go, who are their directs? And sometime in that like first layer to the next layer, you're going to start hearing the story. Like whatever that story is, like, I'm making this up now, but like our CEO thinks that he or she is vastly better designer than he or she is. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's interesting. So what I made that up. I'm not talking about anybody there. Whatever those narratives, like they start to show up. And in terms of understanding the health or the psychological safety of the team, you start to pivot and say like, like a common one is like, especially for rapid growth startups, is like the team doesn't feel they have a concrete growth path. Like this, all 3 in every team ever. But that's one that kind of shows up because it tends to be something during rapid growth. You're like, hire everybody, get them here now. We got a lot to do. We got to show that hockey stick growth, and the humans get a little passed over because there's not really a clear path. And it tends to be, who knows who and does so-and-so like so-and-so. Okay, now she's a director, blah, blah, blah. And it's a mess because it's not principled and it's not fair either, by the way. So you kind of find whatever sort of ails the team and kind of focus to a set of folks which maybe are not obvious, not the directs of the CEO or the directs of the directors or whatever that said. It could be, oh, cool, this team over here is the one in crisis or has the biggest issue. But it depends, and it takes a lot of sort of talking to folks and listening and kind of finding what is the first set of things that you need to focus on, while also learning kind of what the health is. Startups are just bonkers. It's rapid growth. They weren't a sure thing. By the time I usually show up, they're kind of a sure thing, but there's just so much go and hustle as opposed to sort of deep thoughtfulness. So there's lots of opportunities to fix stuff.
Yeah, I love that. I realized this kind of midway through my career and what I'm doing now is a little bit different, so I don't know if it holds, but it held for a long time that I need enough code for there to be a mess. I need there to be enough people for there to be a mess. Like, it's not interesting if it's all smooth sailing for me. And I especially like productivity problems.
Yeah, for me, it's like if you go look at the last 3, for me, it was, I kind of showed up around 150, and there's some interesting things that have happened at 150. 150 means you have a business. Like, this isn't 20 and you kind of, month to month or every quarter to quarter. So like, it's real. And it also is this inflection point, it's this probably magical number of Dunbar's number where there's a social cohesion thing that breaks down because everyone can't know everything anymore. So they start to feel like, who is that, or what does she do, or da da da, and that's alarming to this organism that has since sort of maintained internal coherency. So that's when it's time to start bringing in sort of the big guns.
I joined in Indeed, I think around 250, so it was still, and what a time! I think that our biggest the biggest mess was that we hired lots of people, but we didn't hire managers nearly fast enough to manage the people. And so you ended up with very inexperienced managers managing people.
Or there's the other version of that, which I've experienced multiple times, is they knew to do it, but they just promoted from within. So, which is fine because those are the people that you know and you trust. Like that sounds human to me, but they've never done it before. And it's like why when you're at more established companies when you're like hiring these directors or VPs at a startup, you're like, cool, you're a VP at blah, and you're like, great, that's awesome. How many years have you been doing that? And they're like, 3. Oh, cool. 3 years as a VP. I mean, like 3 years as a leader. I'm like, you're not a VP. Like, and that's the facts in terms of a skill set that I think is important for a senior leader versus a director versus a frontline manager, blah, blah, blah. So it's, there's a lot of that going on, which leads to just sort of, and there's also this like AI, this unbridled enthusiasm. Like, well, I'll just figure it out. It's like, yeah, love it. Go for it. You don't know. So you will figure it out quickly, I'm sure, because you're smart. But you're going to screw it up. It's equal amount.
I have one more question about AI, and then we're going to talk about other things again. I said to this group last week that I can't think of another product that people have bought, that software organizations have bought without a clear hypothesis of what would change or how the productivity would be achieved. Because there's the very naive, like, well, people can type faster and so they'll produce more code, but more code doesn't lead to more productivity.
The thing is like, what you just described is pretty much, I mean, the technology is different, but it's pretty much exactly the same as what we saw with the internet bubble. It was like, oh, we're going to disintermediate the middleman, and we're going to do this, and that. And it was that pets.com thing that we talked about earlier. Like, that was all just like, cool. Well, this is the new shiny, and it's going to give us stuff without any thesis. And by the way, it did result in amazing stuff, but like, how many of those companies are gone now? Like 98%, right? So, whatever that number is, I made that up.
But e-commerce wasn't a fundamentally terrible idea. And
no, exactly.
Chewy.com exists today, right? Like,
but I think that e-commerce thing for AI, whatever that is, I don't know what it is still to be defined. Is that we're going to, in like 3 years ago, we're like, oh yeah, it's a blah, blah, the AI engine that does this thing, which is blah. And we're still defining that. And again, I think it's the enthusiasm it's a little less feverish than it was like 6 months ago, but I don't think we've actually realized what it is yet.
No. And I also think with the internet, like I remember trying to read NewYorkTimes.com on September 11th, 2001. And like, not so much. Like it was kind of like, it was a thing that they were doing to see what the internet was about, but I don't know that they had any big, like, transformational ambitions around. And of course, it has become a transformational tool for media and for lots of other people. But I feel like it was more of an experiment. And now there's like pressure to make AI show value. Whereas the New York Times could have been like, yeah, we tried that for a few years and like, we'd have to put up a paywall and we don't want to do, or whatever. Like, but it was definitely, it felt a lot more experimental and a lot less profit or revenue driven than, now I look at people embracing AI like, this is gonna fix whatever. And the internet was never fixing anything. It was just this new thing.
It is a time of very high enthusiasm. I agree with that, but it is not what it is going to be. But again, there's a set of folks when I'm talking with folks about this, and this happens less and less because it's sort of permeated the membrane of the world right now. But there was a time where I would like talk to people, and I'm thinking of those folks that are pressuring you to kind of define a number or whatever, where they're using the barest of facts or opinions or the thing they heard from Bob over in the other team to say like, cool, we got to get on the AI train or this sort of thing. And when I talk to these folks, I call them the fakers. I talk to these folks, and again, engineer, I'm not trying to be judgy about it. I'm just trying to be a person who thinks about, stuff. But I say, well, what's your concern? Like, and if I get an answer, which is sort of, I don't understand, what they're saying is they don't understand, but they don't say that. They just, because they're scared of not knowing and blah, 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 whatever it is. The fakers need to be, and sorry, making it sound derogatory, and I mostly want to educate people, mostly. They need to know, right, what it can and can't do, even if they're not technical and whatnot. We're lucky in that we have curiosity, and we've been around technology for so many years that we sort of are, we are aware of kind of what it can and can't do. But that's the minority. The majority needs to understand sort of what are the art of the possible here, and they're not there yet. It's still early. It's still early days in terms of understanding. It's our job to educate them, though.
Again, away from AI for a minute, although we are trying so hard. There's echoes of AI if you want to hear them. But you've been around for a while. You've been through downturns before. One of the things that I got laid off once in 2006 or 7, but otherwise my tech career has been mostly of the variety of hire, grow, retain is the job of a manager. But now the job of a manager is to sometimes keep a team running after half of that team is gone. And so what advice do you have? I think there are a lot of leaders who didn't grow up with this experience, and now all they know is the heady days of the 2010s and 2020, 2021. How do you, what advice do you have for that cohort who is maybe, I know I would be questioning whether I wanted this job anymore if that was what I was spending my time doing?
What a good question. Let's start with the hard part. Let's just say you laid off half of your team, for whatever the reason is. Number one is, do you understand why we are here now? You, the leader. Because you got to know, right? Whatever that is, we are this much revenue. This is what we're doing right now. This is the next year that we see. These are all facts in a spreadsheet or wherever it is that exist, and they should frame how you're talking to this about your team. And you're asking a more human question than what I'm saying right now, but I'll get to the human part of it in a second. You have to be able to tell that story, and I don't mean story in a negative way. You got to be able to explain it. And by the way, this is not your question at all. If someone can't explain that to you, if you can't understand it, then I'm one of those folks that needs to get the heck out, because something else is wrong there. And I'm not thinking of any particular company, but if it's sort of we just got to do this thing here, I'm like, you are not telling me the answer to this thing. You are hallucinating the answer for this strategy. So that's number one. But the human side of it is sort of, and this is more sort of the actual process of going on. It's just understand it's an open wound. And humans, it's a professional open wound. It's not you're bleeding, but you are metaphorically bleeding. And then those people that were sitting there in that office or on that Zoom are gone. And it's just the mourning cycle and the grief cycle. And yes, you can kind of say, okay, cool, let's focus on these tactical things, but you just got to let the humans kind of go through that process. It's just going to be awful for a couple of weeks. And, keep the meetings, they're going to feel empty and whatnot. But anytime I've tried to okay, cool, back to work, everybody. I would never do that. But when you're trying to not trying to force what is ultimately a human emotional process, you're going to just get, they're going to be what the heck. And there's going to be a point where they take a deep breath and they're like, okay, what can we do here? And then it goes back to the first part, which is how do we get out of this? What do we need to do as a business for that initial story to be able to do that? Is it quality? Is it more customers? Is it products? I don't know what it is, but got to have that sort of dance card ready to go for the team, which is, you can always point back and say, this fixes this horrible thing that we just went through, or this is progress toward this. It could be little stuff, but it's sort of that means by which you kind of say, cool, this is within your control to do this right now. Let's do this now. But doing that the day after the layoff, super bad idea. There's this swirl and sort of healing that the team needs to go through. Pretty good answer.
The story that you just told of how to recover really requires a team that feels some sense of autonomy and ownership, right? Because if half the team just got laid off and you still have no autonomy, you don't get to decide what you work on, you're still taking tickets, then that's a very different.
Yeah, the culture going into that hypothetical, real but hypothetical in this scenario case, is like really, really important. Like, and to your point, like, if they don't feel the autonomy, if they feel this is just happening to them and they don't understand why, you're in deep trouble, right? You're just in deep trouble, because those people are going to leave. I mean, who knows what's going on in the market, hypothetical scenario, but like, if they don't feel like, hey, cool, here's the dance, this is the thing we need to do, and you're telling them that, and they're like, I was doing that before, and now half my team's gone. So why is this going to be any better? So anyway, it's a complicated one, but it's a time, patience, and small wins is kind of my strat.
And I do think it's really interesting how, again, in 2019, hire, grow, retain. Like, all of our leadership meetings were all about like, what's our hiring pipeline and who's accepted offers. And that was it. That was like what we were talking about all the time. And then that just turned off. And I know for me, it was a like awakening of like, I need to care about things that seemed taken care of.
Yeah. Well, this is, you cannot say this to your team, but you can kind of say it to yourself, which is, failure sucks. Like, it's like, just especially when it's happening and the team's gone or whatever, sort of psychologically safety has been violated. But like, it is one of the more unique crucibles for you as an individual to be able to kind of say, what happened here? How did I get here? What was I too trusting? Did I have bad judgment? Whatever it is, like, it is truly, and again, hearing this when it's bad is the last thing that people want to hear. But I'm like, hey, by the way, the thing I'll say to you in like 3 months or 6 months is like, do you realize how much you're about to learn? Like, it's a crisis and you feel bad and but you are about to learn quite a bit. And it's the hardest way to learn stuff. I would wish we had other ways that we could do this without going through it. But in my head, for leaders, for managers, there's these badges that you get when you go through these things. And they are the worst parts of the gig. And by the way, when you do them, you realize all the things you did wrong to be in that situation. You're like, cool, I am never going to let myself get in that situation again. So I like a lot of my writing, one-on-ones, empathy, all these things are about early detection of things that could turn into horrible things, right? It's all about early detection, because the thing is, every time that like some team is celebrating this win in the site of a site outage or something horrible happened, and when they're all clapping, patting each other on the back and going, "Good job, we saved it." I'm like, it happened. Like, do you understand there was a disaster that we had to save? And I respect everybody, but we screwed up. Like, this is a screw up, and the save was amazing, but it doesn't excuse the screw up. So you got to learn from those.
2 more questions before we wrap up. You mentioned earlier that you have changed some of your beliefs or understandings about management over the years. So tell me more about that.
Well, it's really timely. It's about AI again. Like, I was in a delegation. I don't know. This is I don't know when this was. Maybe it was Palantir. Or maybe it was the first Apple gig. Anyway, the point was this: I'm like, hey, manager, stop coding. This, I wrote that a couple of times. I took a lot of heat for that. It was super bad advice. It's bad advice for engineering leaders. And yes, there's CTOs and VPs and SVPs and blah, blah, blah out there that are probably not doing this, but like, I think losing those fundamental skills. And like, you retain them. It's not like your brain empties out of like knowing how to code or something like that. But I think that reminder to continually build is incredibly important. And I long before AI, I kind of pivoted back to like, you've got to have a side hustle. You've got to have something else that you're doing. And it is a little bit of, do I smell like an engineer to my team? But it's mostly just, and we just learned this big time. It's mostly just, it's such a fast changing industry that if you're not sitting on and staring at it and playing with it and tinkering with it and building with it, you're going to get left behind. That's my problem with the fakers, is like, they're doing just enough. And I've been this person. This is why I can critique them. I was this person with AI until 6 months ago. I was like, yep. And by the way, senior leaders, we are world class at sounding like we know what we talk about. Like, we are so good at that. So,
it's like your whole job, right?
Yeah, exactly. and that's really bad advice. So I changed a lot on that, and I always have something. I'm not checking in code to Git for the company or anything like that, but I have things that I'm doing and I'm building to kind of continue my education. That's my main thing that I went back and forth on.
Yeah, and I find I was in the camp of not coding, and AI has actually, like, I'm having a blast. It's kind of wild. And I don't need to know exactly the syntax of TypeScript types, but I'm still thinking and building, and I love it.
Yeah. And I'm jumping into the code sometimes. Like, I was talking to robots, and it's like, okay, well, I'm going to build you this app. I'm like, okay, blah, blah. And eventually I'm like, what kind of app are we building? It's like, oh, it's a Node app. I'm like, oh, I've never done that before.
Who knew? I'm building a Python app right now. Same.
No, I was like, I'm like, okay, cool. Explain this to me. And then I'm like poking around the code and looking how it works and all that sort of stuff. So that again, I think for folks who have been educated in computer science, and can understand when the robots can understand kind of what's going on, I think we have superpowers now in that we have this ability to kind of have this, again, infinite set of interns helping us do stuff.
Yeah. Well, here's your last chance to talk about AI or not. If you have a creative way to not to, I'll be impressed. But what's your? It is August 25th, 2025. What's your hot take about the industry right now?
Wow, that's a dangerously simple question. I always say this, it's a little unsatisfying. I kind of said this a couple times already. It's like, when I talk to one of the figures and I'm like, in trying to educate them, and I'm like, this is a big deal. It's bigger than it's much bigger than you think. It's for real. And perhaps most alarming or opportunistically, it's like, I don't think we're even close to sort of the final product. And I'm not talking about an advanced general intelligence or anything like that. That's a whole other thing. But just the way that I feel that you're going to work with your tools is going to change. And the way that you're going to work with your personal information is going to change. And this sort of app focus that we've been doing for 20 plus years or so, it's like those tools exist to kind of allow you to go and manage a browser or to set tabs or whatever. You don't really want to do a lot of that. Like, you just kind of want to know, what time is lunch at the high school? Because I don't want to be in town when that sort of thing is. Like, there's this whole set of things, and I think that's both. I think we're years away from this, but I think you're going to see just a transformation in terms of how the humans and the computers are getting stuff done. And I think in the right hands, danger. I think there's some really cool things coming to help people, manage their data, get their stuff done, ask questions, get good answers, blah, 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 blah. It's all very nerdy right now. Prompts are nerdy. I love writing. I'm a writer, and prompts are fun to watch what it does. But like, is your average human being going to want to write 3 sentences to kind of figure out how to reconcile their calendar or whatever the heck that is? So I think it's a long way of saying, I think it's very early days in terms of what companies are going to produce. And I think it's exciting. I can see all of the nuts and bolts and how they're going and magically doing things right now. So I went through the social thing too. So I also know deeply how it can be weaponized by evil people. And it's already happening, by the way. But I'm generally an optimist. So,
well, again, it's like the internet all over again. We're like editing Apache configs right now. I feel like that's where we're.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Michael, it has been, or Rands, whatever. Do people call you Rands in real life?
People call me Rands when they're talking about the blog or I'm speaking at a conference. So I know who they're talking about. But anything
otherwise, your name is Michael. Okay. Well, Michael, this has been so great. I'm so glad I got to meet you earlier this year and that you agreed to chat. This has been awesome, and I can't wait to read your next book. And hopefully find my copy of. I gotta find my copy of Managing Humans. I was hoping to have it hold up. I know I own it, but don't ask me where right now. Well, that's the show. Engineering Unblocked is brought to you by Swarmia, the engineering intelligence platform that's trusted by some of the best software companies in the world. See you next time.